The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Mondays here. It's Hail Varsity. You can always find us on Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter, different platforms and across the Hail Varsity Radio network. There's been a lot of therapy with our reaction show Saturday, the Average Joe pod yesterday, but more for you. There's a couch just over to my left. Lay down and let's have a therapy Monday. Ohio State looms as we'll be in Columbus beginning this Thursday. It's our Hail Varsity Road Show as we're in Columbus through Saturday. So we'll see what Nebraska decides to do as a football team and respond. We'll hear from Matt Rhule. We'll hear from you. In the stream, we'll get our starting five shout-outs. But open phones for you to get in at 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. Tim Verghese going to join us. We'll have plenty of room in hour one. And then Charlie McBride, Coach Charlie, will give us his thoughts of Saturday and the upcoming Saturday. Jay Moore, the Blackshirt Hour, bookends it in hour two. 489-1240 if you want to get in. Maybe you're over it. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you're in wait-and-see mode. But you had the unholy Husker bingo card going probably on Saturday where a lot of things that show up in deflating, embarrassing blowout losses rear their ugly head. And I think the biggest thing is, as a Nebraska fan with a new head coach, with a guy you like, with a guy that you think can and will, maybe you don't anymore, but you can and did think can get things turned around in Matt Rhule. And I still think he can, dude. I'm not out on Rhule. But, you know, as a fan base, you're out on performances like that. Elijah, Nebraska fans, a lot of you thought that, all right, you were past moments like Saturday. You get beat, fine. You might even get blown out, but you're going to look competitive or you're going to fight. You're going to fight. And Nebraska got tossed around physically. Nebraska fans hate getting dominated physically. They don't like seeing inept offense. They don't like seeing inability to run the football. They don't like seeing a defense get gashed on the ground. There's so many things that went wrong Saturday. And then I don't mind Rhule being honest and saying I didn't see it coming, but you saw elements of past regimes in that loss. You saw the blowout on a big stage, a la the Bo era. You saw Mike Riley's pro-style offense not work. You think of the Tanner Lee era where the poor quarterback's just chucking it to the wrong team or under duress because you have no run game. And then you saw just unpreparedness, a la the Frost era. There's a lot of ball games in the Frost era that the team didn't look ready to go, and you didn't look ready to go after a bye week. So soul-searching time. We'll get to your calls here in a moment, but I didn't think Nebraska would play well. I don't think this team is – I've been wondering a long time how good they are. And, you know, Illinois has proven to be pretty good. Colorado's proven to be pretty good. So they have some good wins or some good games, okay? But Nebraska's going the wrong direction, Elijah, at this point in the season. They can still turn it around, but you just wonder from that leadership standpoint. You got a lot of guys that haven't won a lot of ball games, and when it goes sideways, I think Jamari Butler's comments post-game are pretty telling. You still have that here we go again mentality, and unless they jump out and kind of in get encouragement through their play or through the scoreboard, if they face adversity, this team tends to fold in tough ball games.
Yeah, and what's really disheartening to me on a Monday, thinking back on the game, and I've made this point over the weekend on a couple different shows, but I'll reiterate it because it's still stuck in my craw, is the fact that Nebraska, the issues that we've talked about through the first couple games of the season, especially after the Illinois game, are still the same problems. Where you're
There's
rushing,
not any fixes.
it feels like you're smashing your head into a brick wall with this rushing attack. There's been no changes to the rushing attack, and it's, well, we need the offensive line to block better. You need to be able to have a downfield passing attack to open up some of those things. It's not, you know what, maybe the rushing attack needs to change. The fact that your wide receivers are still unable to get open against man coverage. That's something I said way back when, I think pre-Illinois game, I said on this show, Nebraska is really struggling against man coverage. That's why Northern Iowa had success against them. I've been saying that for weeks now. The fact that Nebraska's wide receivers are either unwilling or unable to block on the perimeter, which really eliminates Nebraska's ability to go short passing attack, go screen game, to have explosive running plays. That's a big issue that we've been talking about for weeks and it hasn't been fixed. Like, the same issues that have plagued Nebraska for the past 5 to 6 weeks are still the same issues that led them to lose that football game on Saturday. That's what's disheartening to me is for being a developmental football program, it's still the same issues that are causing the Huskers to look bad on Saturdays. And for the same reasons why they lost 56-7. You're a developmental football program, but the players aren't getting better as the season goes along. That's what's really disheartening to me.
Let's go to the phone lines. Tad gets us kicked off. Tad, thanks for calling. Welcome into Hail Varsity. Go ahead.
Thanks, brothers. Guys, listen, I've been saying this for a long time. You know how I feel. And the foundation at Nebraska is nil. What we've done since Coach Osborne retired is made up the excuses, made up some talk about that we need to change. But let me tell you something. You have the quarterback. Now build around him with an unbelievable tailback, Lawrence Phillips, and let's get some boys up front that are really athletic and that can block. But let's build a foundation. The foundation needs to be, and this is me talking like a football player, a run game first. You got to learn how to run the football, and you got to recruit that. But you got to do that. And I'll tell you another thing. By having Rhule in there as quarterback, he's a fantastic quarterback, but not to have Harbor on the field and running him, and when we go into situations where they've locked down our passing, to put him in, to come in and survive with the other tangible that he brings. So, anyway, guys, you know how I feel. I'll leave it back to you. Thank you so much.
Dad, appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, Nebraska's in a situation where it's not 11-on-10 football because of the offense. Now, the upside is you have a dynamite young quarterback that's learned some tough lessons the last 3 outings, but has started off the season at a pretty high level. So there's upside if you can get the dude some help. And there's just a disconnect, it feels like, with what your head coach wants your offense to be and what your offensive coordinator is calling. And the whole world's out for Satterfield. And I know it's not looked good. I know Brandon Vogel's numbers. Vogel's column today with Counter Read lays it out perfectly. You've scored 30 points once against Power 5 competition. That was against Purdue, and 7 of that was the field goal block return. So technically you've scored 24 points twice on offense. But your offensive output in Big Ten play is brutal. And conversely, the defense is your strength. That being said, if someone scores more than 14 against the defense, Nebraska didn't win the football game. So think about that margin where your offense has scored 24 points twice and your defense can't give up over 2 touchdowns. The whole mental health of this football team is on alert right now, quite frankly, with what happened Saturday and what's coming this Saturday. I'm anxious to see how they respond. Do you fight or is there flight?
And I'm glad you brought up the mental fortitude of this team, because a lot of people have been calling for coaches' heads over the past couple of days, and I think maybe deservedly so with the performances that these coaches have shown us through 19 games at Nebraska. But the mental fortitude's something you want to dive into there, because that's clearly an issue with this football team. And when you're one game away from bowl eligibility, do you want to potentially derail the mental fortitude even more by firing position coaches and firing coordinators? I don't think so. Combine that with the fact that Matt Rhule, through all of his stops, does not fire and hire coaches mid-season. That's not who he is. I don't want to say put that to bed, because I think the fans are coming from a right place there of, you know what, standards have not been met by some of these coaches and by these coordinators, but also it's not happening. So I don't think we need to waste our breath talking about it. I want to get back to one of the things Tad said, though, with the talent. You need athletic offensive linemen. You need a dude at running back. And yeah, that's easy to say. How do you go about doing that?
You win. You win and you get him here, but you can't get him here if you don't win, or you better hit on the right guy in the portal. Nebraska's tried portal shopping. They've got some, what you'd like to think is upgrade from an experience standpoint, but it's clearly not produced post week 2.
Yeah.
At wide receiver anyway.
And compare that to Indiana. Indiana, 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen in a line of scrimmage conference, the Big Ten, were guys that played on that Indiana offensive line last year. An offensive line that wasn't very good last year. Indiana's coaches came in, they made an offensive system that could bring the most out of them, the RPO system where the defensive line doesn't know if it's going to be a run or a pass. Matt Rhule talked about that today in his press conference, saying we had a lot of defensive linemen getting into their pass rush on running plays because the offensive line or the offense didn't give a tell with the RPO. You don't know if it's going to be a run or a pass, and that's opening up rushing lanes because they're not playing their run responsibilities anymore. They're trying to get to the passer. They put in a system at Indiana that could allow a potentially subpar offensive line to play at their best. Compare that to Nebraska. Do you have an offensive system that minimizes the weaknesses of your offense and brings the most out of them, or are you slamming your head into a brick wall because this is what we want to be from an identity point of view? You got to win football games to get donations to NIL, to get recruits across the country to notice what you're doing. It's all well and good to sell sunshine, but whenever it's actually nut cutting time, you're trying to get a guy to come to your football program, the success on the field matters. And I don't think Nebraska has an offense right now that brings out the best of their offensive talent and minimizes the weaknesses.
Well, the other scary thing here is, all right, you got your 5-star quarterback. Is he progressing or is he regressing? And he's going the wrong direction because you've not helped him. You've not helped him in the short game because your downfield blocking's atrocious. You've not helped him in the run game because either you're playing the wrong running back or the running back you have in fumbles, or there's just not any push by the offensive line. Finally got your 4.5, 5-star tight end involved 7 games in, and you're I don't know what you call right now if you're Satterfield. That what can you go do and do well, and what can you go do and do well that they're not ready for, that they saw early in the season, that now they're ready for you on Saturday. Indiana walked in, Cignetti knew they were going to roll. He was confident, his kids were confident. Nebraska, we'll hear from Rhule this hour, he thought they were going to be fine. I'm glad he's honest and said that he thought they were ready, and instead they weren't ready for the moment. I'm fine with all of that being laid out publicly. And he's not throwing anyone under the bus, and he knows they got to get to work. But the point is this: you can't go get annihilated, and it poses some bigger questions. Is this a bump in the road this week and next, and then you change that tune in November as a football program going into year 3, or is this the tip of the iceberg where you might start sinking here, and it's going to be a real struggle to get this rebuild? We talked timeline over the weekend, Elijah, and right now you've got a pause on your build.
And I think long-term, this can be a bump in the road, but this is a wake-up call for the rebuild as a whole because it's a major alarm bell for the rest of your season. Saturday, combined with your performance against Rutgers, combined against your performance against Purdue, combined against, name a game this season, has shown me that what this offense needs is a major overhaul to scheme. What they're doing right now is not working. It does not match the talent that they have on the field.
Pieces, or what you do have, you're not complementing with what you can call.
That being said, this isn't an NFL team, and it's even hard to do in the NFL. You can't go major offensive overhaul during a season.
In season. Can't do it.
You can't do it. So it becomes major alarm bells for me for the rest of the football season. You're into the meat of your schedule. You're probably going to have 2 back-to-back bad losses, one against Indiana and likely one coming up on Saturday against Ohio State. You can't go offensive overhaul. How do you get points?
You got to show some fight. Well, we have one phase of the football that is your strength, and when that phase of the football, your defense plays somebody that can run and throw, that has a competent quarterback, you're 0-2. So buckle up. Let's get to the call-outs here. Our starting 5, Tiger Shark driver in first. I don't know. All I know is will we see Saturday if they've given up? So he's wondering if Nebraska's checked out. I don't think they've given up. I don't think Rhule will let that happen.
Especially not one win away from a bowl game.
No. Brent is in. You have 3-putt. Justin is here. Good to have Justin in the starting 5. NASCAR Eric checks in, asks if the sun has risen. It's very cloudy and it might storm here where we're broadcasting from. Brian checks in. Donnie Trump is in. Thank you, Donnie. The real Matthew is here. Black Hills Brennan checking in from the Black Hills. After taking some time to digest that game, I still have the bleeps. Tuck is here. Loose Lips checks in. More from you. Anonymous is here. Mr. Snitley's back. Tim Verghese on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Tim Verghese is here inside NebraskaRivals.com at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Can watch this on the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Tim, what was your prediction going into Saturday?
Oh, man, I'm definitely not what we saw. Yeah, definitely not that.
Pretty brutal. Let's dive in a smidge to Nebraska, Indiana, and I guess the ripple effects of getting rocked like that for a program to potential recruits. You work your butt off to be on that showcase. Nebraska's an eyeball brand. Nebraska's still trying to build and get some Jimmies and Joes, and it didn't go well Saturday.
Yeah, the thing I come back to, I think thinking about that game is, I thought at certain positions Nebraska might have a talent advantage, and that just did not happen. Like from the jump, and it was pretty evident pretty early on. Indiana was faster and more physical at a lot of key positions. I'd argue at arguably every single position, and that's continuity, that's age, that's a lot of those key contributors were guys that came over from James Madison. Curtis Rourke obviously had his favorite receiver that he brought with him from Ohio. I think it's just it was a lot of that, but I didn't expect Nebraska to get out athleted. I guess that's the best way to put it. The way they did, and I think if you're looking for a redeeming or like something to hold on to amidst that, I guess you would say the athletes that Rhule is bringing in are still the young guys that haven't played all that much. Like the veterans that play specifically on defense are not the Rhule guys. Like those are the veterans. I mean, and on one hand, it's like, okay, hey, but Nebraska had a bunch of veterans out there, but also those are not Rhule's veterans. Those are veterans from the previous staff.
Is it concerning to you, Tim, that after 19, almost 20 games through, that we still aren't seeing most of the young guys? The fact that it is a lot of the holdovers that are still playing for this team? Because you look back to Rhule at Temple, Rhule at Baylor, the standard was the young guys played early, and those young guys that took their lumps in year 1 were the guys that were winning football games in year 3 and then year 4. Like, is that a concern to you that most of these young guys, I mean, we talk about some of them redshirting this season, some of them playing limited snaps. They're not the guys that are coming in as a talent infusion to this football team. It's still mostly holdovers that are the guys that are playing the significant snaps for you.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a concern, but I think it is just like kind of like the faith that they do have in the top end guys. Like, I'm a little over the course of the season, I've been a little surprised at the lack of rotation compared to last season. Because I feel like we got a lot more rotation last year, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And you're not seeing that as much this year, which is part of the reason you're not seeing the young guys. Because again, and rightly so, I mean, for the first 6 games of the year, you had every reason to believe in the veterans that are out there on defense to hold their own. But we kind of saw what we did yesterday or on Saturday. And now it's like, okay, do you open up some of these spots for more rotations? Do you open up, like get some young guys in there, get some quicker guys in there? I think again, you see Vincent Shavers out there, you see the younger Buford out there, like you see a little of it, but you want to see more. And again, at some point it's like, where are these young guys? And I think the biggest one for me is at receiver and the skill positions. Like where are those young guys?
Yeah, I look. Jalen Lloyd seems to have regressed since last season. Malachi Coleman's barely been out there this year. Like, I'm with you. I mean, even you look defensively, guys that you thought splashed in year one that were going to take a big jump this year, Cam Linhart, Princewell, like guys that you really thought were the foundation of the program. You get into year two where you think they're going to make a jump, and you ask, where was that jump? Where has that jump been for those guys?
Yeah, like again, like the Cam Linhart, like I think there's been moments where he's been good, but it almost feels like there's times where I'm like, where is like him and Princewell at times, like Princewell at least at times you see him flash off the edge, but yeah, I think a lot of the young guys, it's like you're saying, I think there's been some regression a little bit, and again, I don't know if that just comes with part of it too. It is just like, is it not being able to get into a rhythm just because of the way the games are being played now, or is it the way the rotations are being handled now? Like, I'm not sure what exactly the issue is, because again, the talent is still there for these guys. And there was a point this year where I felt like, okay, Jalen Lloyd's taking that leap into being used like Ja'Cory Barney is, and then it kind of stopped happening.
Tim Verghese with us inside Nebraska Rivals.com. What do you do moving forward? You don't want regression to continue, and Dylan's had to fight through a lot. I don't think there's a lot of help around him, or at least the execution isn't there. Tim, put your OC hat on for a moment here. What do you do moving forward to get the best out of this offense? It's really, really struggling.
I think you have to just find the easy wins. You just have to spam and find easy wins, build some confidence in the unit, whatever that is. Like find, do you have run plays you can lean on? Find those, even if that means getting Heinrich Harburg out there and rotating the quarterbacks a little bit more to develop something of a consistent run. Find something to hang your hat on. I mean, I think it's like, I would say one thing I think that's really alarming is the comments again. I mean, we see it. It's not like we don't need it to be said. Like, we see the perimeter blocking being an issue, the inability to get off press, both of that being an issue. And it's been a focus since the offseason. Like, those were things we talked about with them in fall camp. Like, we were interviewing guys in the hallway asking about improvements to that back in fall camp, and we're 7 games into the year and that hasn't improved. That's on coaching, that's on effort, that's on technique. Like, that just, those aren't something that you either naturally have or don't. You can coach that into a player.
Tim Verghese with us here talking Nebraska, Indiana. And Tim, we'll get to recruiting here in just a moment, a big flip over the weekend for Nebraska. But I want to ask a question that I kind of dove into in the first segment, and it's with the offense. Do you think that the offense that Nebraska is running is bringing the most out of the talent that Nebraska has on the offensive side of the ball? Because you look at Indiana. In Indiana, I think, installed an offensive system where they had 4 holdovers that are 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen. It wasn't a great unit last year. You come in with a lot of RPO, things that make that defensive line kind of question what they're seeing. It allows them to play at their best. I think you're seeing an offensive system at Indiana that brings the most out of their players while minimizing some of the weaknesses. Do you see that in Nebraska? Because I think that's the hallmark of a good offensive coordinator, is a guy that puts in a scheme and a system that brings the most out of his players while minimizing some of their weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the case. Like, I think the case of Nebraska's offense right now is pretty early on. And again, like, I will also say this, like, to his credit, they've tried to scheme up those easy wins and those opportunities, like the bubble screens, the lateral screens. It's just, again, the perimeter blocking isn't there and there isn't proper execution, but at some point when it's like you're 7 games in and none of this is being executed right, it comes down to coaching. You can't keep pointing at lack of execution at individual players. It comes down to coaching. So like, Nebraska's tried to find those easy wins and tried to find those, like, those RPOs, make things easy for Dylan. But it's just, if for whatever reason it's not consistent, it's not happening, and it's different things that are impacting it. There's similar issues, perimeter blocking, inability to get off press, inability to break tackles. Like, those 3 things keep popping up, but then you get, false start by the offensive tackle that started the most games at this program. You get, the ball just floats and falls into the dirt. Oh, it gets pressured. He's not able to, it's strange. And it feels like they try to open up the playbook real early for Dylan and challenge him with this NFL offense. And they've not built on it since. I figured this playbook would change throughout the course of the season to lean on the early wins, but it's like they go back to the stuff they were running in week 1 and 2, and if there's no adjustments, like the tight end screen to the flat. They keep trying to make that work. We're 7 games in the year, and it's not worked once.
Well, because the downfield blocking's either been a penalty or completely missed. Tim Verghese with us. Tim, tell us about Julian Juju Marks, the flip on Nebraska's favor. The offensive tackle that was committed to Leipold at KU is now wearing big red.
Yeah, again, you needed some type of positivity coming out of the weekend, so I guess you get that. Good win. I think it's a good land, and again, something that I know caught some people off guard, but one of those recruitments that flew under a bunch of radars just because he kind of made it known he wanted to stay closer to home. But you go look at the offer list, you go look at how much schools invested in him, even as recently as last spring, prior to his commitment to Kansas and his kind of emphasis on staying home, which saw some of these national powers pull out. A guy that again just fits the Rhule profile in terms of these athletes that can play a bunch of different positions. Started his high school career on the defensive line, kind of converted to offensive line, is starting to settle in a little bit as a senior at that position, and a guy that comes in, I think with fits the profile of the other offensive tackles they have in the class, big guys, athletic guys that can move around. Juju's a guy that's really athletic. You see, he's got a basketball background. He still plays, AAU basketball, and you can see that, in just the way he moves for a guy that is. We had him listed as 6'6", 285 with a 6'10" wingspan and a really big base. He moves really well in space. So there's a lot to like there, but it is a work in progress. There's things that need to improve. He's not a guy that's going to come in and have an instant impact or anything, but he's a guy that can come in, kind of train him in your O-line room early on. If it's not really working out there, you can try him in a D-line. You can't have enough of these big bodies, and more than anything, I think it's a nice win in Kansas City, and Nebraska's kind of trying to go 3 for 3 now, trying to flip Dawson Merritt too. Was the comment I saw saying, asking why you flipped, well, they offered me more money, is that a real quote? Because that put a smile on my face yesterday. Yeah, it's a real quote. He wanted it to get taken down just because, I guess he didn't realize that was being taken on the record, but it was a miscommunication there. That quote's real, and I'll say this, I understand that, some people had some questions about that. I think Nebraska should be flexing that more, if it's hey, the on-field stuff isn't there, you might as well flex the fact that, you have a good donor base. You can kind of out-recruit some of these programs in the region with that donor base. And again, that's just reality of recruiting right now. He's a 4-star offensive tackle. He was getting money from somewhere. It might as well be Nebraska,
Tim, what's coming up from you, bud, as we say goodbye? Appreciate you giving us a few minutes. What are you working on this week?
Of course, yeah. I've got a Dawson Merritt story tomorrow. Just checking in with, commits and targets and kind of seeing what's up. At least from the early, just the early texts and everything I've exchanged so far this week, I don't think the loss – more people see the loss as an outlier more than anything. They still think the general infrastructure's there and the structure's there. And a lot of the issues that, popped up on Saturday are fixable over the course of an offseason. But as far as the course of the season, it's just I think right now Nebraska really needs to at least get that bowl game to try and, hold on to whatever momentum they still have left on the recruiting trail.
Tim, appreciate you much. Good to spend some time. Thanks for a few minutes, bud.
Of course, appreciate you all.
All right, there he is, Tim Verghese. We'll hear from Matt Rhule. More of your comments on the way with Hail Varsity.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. Big thanks to Tim Verghese. We'll get that posted on the podcast page, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play when you search Hail Varsity Radio. You can like and subscribe, Hail Varsity Radio YouTube. Check and like and subscribe to both of those. Some emails to get to. Brian checks in, says the O-line built like Tarzan, plays like Jane. That is one of the criticisms. What's your biggest gripe from Saturday, aside from the obvious, the score? But there's a lot of things you can point out. Jay says square pegs, round hole, kind of like Callahan. And to me, Elijah, I hate the fact that Nebraska has 6'3", 6'4" wideouts that just aren't getting it done on the perimeter when it comes to blocking. You have other options to go to at wide receiver. Now, it might be a tell. Oh, look, Bullock is in. Maybe they're going to throw a short pass. But Nebraska's been relegated to checkdowns because a lot of guys can't get open, or if they are open, they're not being found. We'll hear from Matt Rhule here because I want to dive into the here we go again comment. And a lot of you are ticked about the I didn't see this coming from Saturday's post game. But you have Rhule. We'll start with cut 4 here. Rhule was asked about challenging his assistants, moving forward, and also he addressed the didn't see it coming comment. Here's Coach.
Keith told me, I do a good job in season just staying very locked in and not reading stuff and listening to stuff. But, Keith kind of said, hey, he said to me today, your statement of I didn't see this coming gained traction. To which I would say, and I'm just going to get your point, if I saw this coming, then you guys should all be very nervous. I thought we were going to play well, and I thought we had a great bye week. And we legitimately, Sam, I'm telling you, we legitimately, worked on these things over and over. Now, sometimes, no one's going to want to hear this. Sometimes maybe it'll show up this week, maybe it'll show up the next week. But these are not things we haven't done all year, all spring. We got to that moment, and we just didn't do the things I know we're capable of doing. And so I hate when coaches walk in after games and say, "Hey, that's on me." But I really felt that way because I know what we're capable of doing, and we didn't do it. We just weren't ready for that moment. We weren't ready for that game. We weren't ready for. And it felt like that all the way up. Even in pregame, it felt awesome. So, to your point, I think there's a challenge sent to the coaches. There's also a challenge sent to the players. These are grown men. You're supposed to block that guy. Block him. Block him. There's a couple of plays. Emmett spins out of one, and if the guy would have blocked the safety on the backside, he'd gone for a touchdown. I just show the guys as a team how much we all affect each other. A missed block on a bubble screen leads to a 4th and 8 pick, which leads to the ball going all the way down to the 20, which leads to a touchdown. Everyone's got to do their job and do it at a high level. So, to me, this happened to us. We allowed it to happen. It stunk. It hurt. We'll find out a lot about ourselves moving forward. We'll find out about the coaches. We'll find out about the players. We'll find out about me. The last thing we're going to do is sit around and be victims. So yeah. There's areas that we struggled in that game, but at the same time, we haven't struggled tackling like we did in that game. We haven't struggled getting off blocks. We haven't struggled guys. We haven't done that, and so we did it in that game. So I think today we took a deep step back, and then we'll attack the week.
So that's Matt Rhule hitting on a couple of things. 489-1240 open phone lines, or stream comments. Hail Varsity YouTube, where you can go for your comments. So he's laying it out there, and he thinks the work, the emphasis will pay off. But there's got to be some accountability. And they keep calling the short pass play to Barney just as a case in point, and you're getting penalized or you're missing the block. And a lot of it's number 18. And I'm calling him out because it's pretty evident. And the guy you bring in that played well at Wyoming and Texas is a talented dude, by all accounts, good dude, but he's not getting the job done on the perimeter. So he either needs to start getting the job done 7 games in, or he needs to not be on the field when you're calling that play. Period. It's pretty simple. And the accountability needs to be kicked in here for Saturday. If guys aren't doing their job.
Well, and the problem is there's two sides for why a guy's not getting it done: effort or ability. And with Nebraska's wide receivers as a whole, you see both. And you see a lot of both of guys.
Sometimes they get beat, and sometimes it's not a great effort.
Sometimes guys, there was a play where Banks got a block in the back because it's great effort, but it's poor ability. You can't go do that on a play like that where it is a game of 5 for Nebraska. Exactly.
Don't touch.
There's issues with both. And a great coachingism out there is either you're coaching something or you're allowing it to happen. And I don't know which it is with Nebraska's wide receivers. But right now, the coaching is not up to snuff because with the perimeter blocking, with being able to beat press man coverage, with being able to beat man coverage in general, either they're not coaching the guys well enough to be able to do those things well, or they're allowing the poor effort and the poor ability to continue happening. Either way, I'm not putting a strike on the players. I'm putting it on the coaches for either coaching it wrong or allowing it to happen. Either way, I look squarely at the coaches on that. Because you've had how many games now to fix that? As I said in the first segment, we identified perimeter blocking as an issue weeks ago. So either you're coaching it wrong or you're allowing it to continue happening. Either way, I look squarely at the coaching staff.
Well, extremely negative, Mike. He has changed his name back. Rhule, year 3 at Nebraska is going to look like his first year at Baylor. Montana Husker fan checking in. You watch other teams play, and they just go bleeping play football. Do the offensive schemes suck? Yes, but the players don't. Just don't make it too hard. Easy to say, but hard to do for Nebraska. Cut 8. Jamari Butler's comments, the topic of here we go again. You hate that, but it's a real thing with this football program. Here we go with Coach Rhule.
No, I do think, if I'm going to be completely honest, my battle since I've been here has been the here we go again, which is predates us. It's like, here we go again. Whether it's just the constant narratives of tough losses or we were having some success early, the local narrative is always very much like, here's what they're not good at, right? So our kids are reading what they're not good at. And that's life. I'm not complaining about that. It's just you want to come play in Nebraska, you deal with it. So when things go wrong, we naturally, in that game, to me, kind of, in some ways, it looked like sunk back into, like, here we go again. And I'm not saying that I saw that. Okay, I didn't feel that during the game. I was competing to the end, but that's, as I talk to people, that's kind of what they said. I think it always comes down to just football. Like if you're supposed to be in the B gap, then be in the B gap. Like, don't go to the A gap. Like, touchdown hits because you're in the wrong gap. So whether that's confidence or whatever. But it's the first time we've been down, right? We've been up in every football game for pretty much most of the game, right? And then all of a sudden now we're down for one. So this is a great opportunity for our guys. It's like a gut check to say, like, hey, if every time we're down we're going to talk about our confidence, then, like, man, we better start handing out participation trophies. Like, this is a game for men to go out and battle and fight. And you find out a lot about yourself when you get knocked down. We were knocked down in the second half. We were knocked down of that game. You come back, you don't point fingers. Like I didn't think the guys threw their helmets or acted foolish. You took the loss. As bad as that loss felt, it's the same as losing 7-6. You're 5-2. Find the things you're good at, build off them, work on the things you're not good at, come back the next week and go compete. So all those other things like confidence and all that, I mean, I think those are I was very direct with the team. Like, we're not going to make a bunch of excuses. Like, we just didn't play well enough. Go play better. Go coach better.
He's right. Go play and coach better. Not all losses, though, are created equal. We'll get back into that here after the break.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down this first hour, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. What coach think of Saturday? How many vases and TVs were busted at the McBride cabin? We'll find out from Uncle Charlie. Jay Moore with us also. Blackshirt Hour, next hour. Brian Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, checks in, says it's not a Jimmy's and Joe's issue. It's more mental issues with the holdovers. A lot of fourth-year-plus guys that really struggled Saturday, similar to Illinois. A lot of regression at the safety rover spots. You've got a lot of guys that have given their life, their blood, their effort to this football program, Elijah, that you wish for them to play better in those big games. And Nebraska is going to need to start competing better. And I don't know if it's this year or beyond with some of the younger crew that you referenced. You've got a track record of turning to young players if you're Matt Rhule at Temple and at Baylor. And you want to give the older guys every opportunity to go lead this team back to a bowl game because that's why they came back. All that being said, you can't freeze up in big game moments. They're all big games, but you can't go get when when it goes from 14-7 to 21-7, that can't be the minute you turn the lights out. And that's when the lights got turned out on Nebraska. Complimentary football's been a mess. Offensive setup's been a mess. It sounds like Dylan's been working with a gimpy ankle a little bit, but there's just no help for your freshmen. And then defensively, let's be straight. Tony White and his crew, they've been asked to do a lot of heavy lifting through 19 games. That's what you lean on. You lean on the strength of your football team. You also wonder, from an adjustment standpoint, what could you have done in hindsight? We might hear from Tony White if he's asked that tomorrow. What could you do? You saw an adjustment against Rutgers, against their run game. There wasn't a threat of getting beat by Callie McManus. There was sure as hell a threat of getting beat by the QB1 and QB2 of Indiana last Saturday. And you know what the deal is with Will Howard, his mobility and his weapons on top of the offensive line and defensive line. So not good. Nate emails in, says, now that the pomp and circumstance is in the offseason, you bring in DR and getting big wide receivers, and most of the returning guys are defensive. We are still where we've been the last however many years. Is Rhule the answer? Nate says, I still think so, but are we trying to drive off DR? Because this is going to do it. I watched a lot of football Saturday night, and if you don't have a quarterback that can't move or even take off when the receivers are covered, things are going to be hard moving forward. I just hope Rhule isn't going to turn into Callahan and keep his friends around. Lots of changes need to happen on the staff to save this roster from all going away. All that being said, GBR since 1985. That is Nate, and that is Nate's email. A lot of worry out there with the Big Red Army. A lot of Nebraska fans are worried about defections. A lot of Nebraska fans are worried about the rest of the season because it was an earth-shattering loss. It's not supposed to happen under this new guy.
Yeah, and in terms of changes, we're out of time, so I don't have time for full thoughts, but I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with that.
Coach McBride coming up, hour 2 at Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Mr. Blackshirt, a Monday with Charlie. Coach Charlie McBride. Coach, a tough one on Saturday. Thanks for a few minutes today. And let's dive in. 56-7. Tough on all phases. What did you see Saturday? How did that happen?
Well, I listened to a lot of radio a little bit, and I watched TV. Nobody mentioned the portal. Nobody. Mm-hmm. And they all, it's all about the score. Mm-hmm. Now, look at that guy brought in 27 players, and 24 of them started, and there was only about 20 were starters, and I think 4 of them were there. And he chose them all, and he studied it, and he made a statement after the game. If I didn't get these kids, I wouldn't have taken this job. Mm-hmm. It tells you something. That's the new thing in football. Go out and get yourself a new team, and it's going to ruin it. And it will ruin football for a long time, and money's going to get involved in it now, and everything else. And the thing our fans have to do is be positive. He's doing the right thing. I mean, he's, some schools have the money, some don't have it. And we spent ours on the building and so forth and that, and we still have money, but it's not like if you want to put $20 million into a team, and then turn around and it stinks. And the A&M tried that one and got the coach fired. But he did a thing. He checked these kids out, and they probably had some kind of a plan, as to who we want to take and who we didn't. And it had to do with character, and it had to do with, everything you have to look at. I mean, you look at everything, and you bring a quarterback in who had 7,000 yards already. I mean, you think he can throw the ball, for Pete's sake, and things like that. And so, it's pretty tough, and it's a tough thing to do, and to bring about a whole new team in. I don't know what happens to the other kids on the team, but he didn't seem to be worried about that. So I'm sure there's some sour grapes somewhere, in that program. But who knows? And one of the things that's going to hurt them in recruiting is if they bring in any high school kids, and they're all going to say, well, I wonder if I'm going to be here next year.
The long-term build, Coach, is to go through high school and then sprinkle in the right portal guys, and that's kind of the road Nebraska's taken. They're using NIL to fund, be it the portal guys or some of the high-profile high school recruits. When we talk about Saturday, and just Nebraska didn't look prepared, and Coach Rhule said, all right, it was surprising to me, and that was different to hear. That being said, did you have a pretty good feel how the guys were going to perform on a given Saturday, that pulse of your team, that pulse of your defense?
Well, right. Look, right now you have 22, I think, 22 categories in statistically, and they're ahead of us in 16 of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the first year, I mean, so that tells me something, and but the thing that happens with a lot of this thing is fan backlash, and they all get to a point where and even with the kids, I mean, they're young kids, and they're thinking, what am I doing here? I'm going to take off. And now they got a portal guy, a good one, a fast one, a slow one, a big one. The other thing is we have all said from day one, there are some problems still in the offensive line and maybe in a few guys in defense. And then you got to get every year you fight that. We fought it, I mean, you got to find guys to fit there and get them in the portal right now is the answer. Look at what the guy at Colorado did. He ran them all off and brought in a whole new team. And so are we going to do that? I hope not. I just don't feel like I was a player, and I'd rather be on a team I was with a team, a bunch of guys stuck together, and from day one, our coach got fired, but we all stayed there, and we all listened to all that baloney from the fans, and we end up winning going to the Orange Bowl, winning the Big Eight, and we just kept pounding. And these kids can, when you study when they study our film, our defensive, let's say, every year you got to make some changes, or you're going to get hammered because they're going to figure out what you're doing. And so next year they look at him and see what he's doing. And, and I give him credit. I mean, he got some things from Nick Saban's philosophy and his how he handled kids and how he handled players and some of the things like that he even mentioned that has helped him most. He said when he went and worked for him, that was the thing that helped him the most was how he handled the players and how he handled the team. And so he said, I learned a lot from him, you know. So it wasn't like, you know, a guy came in and did all this stuff. If he come in, he wouldn't have taken the job. He said if he couldn't have these portal kids, he wouldn't take the job. Well, you know, it tells you something. And so, and he was honest. He said everything he said. He said, you know, all of these things helped him and make the change. The fact that he knew he had all these linemen coming in and so forth. So, you know, it makes a big difference. And, you know, what is going to happen more and more because everybody's going to get fired up about the portal now and bring them all in and changing around. And as long as we can keep our kids solid and keep them in here and keep them going, they're going to win. I'm telling you, I just, you know, they're going to win. There's places they have to get better, but, you know, that comes with age. You know, it comes with a lot of things. We got young kids. They'll lose a lot of those guys. So, you know, and you know, one thing I learned a long time ago was, you know, and we were funny. In fact, I learned it when I was down visiting Michigan State, and Nick was on the staff, was the word great is a word that fuels people. I don't know if you remember what Scott Frost used to do. We had a great practice today. We were greater. Our practice today was better than yesterday. It was so great. Well, great is a funny word. You won't find Tom using it very much, you know, and that's one of the things we got to remember to stay away from. One of the things that you can talk to the players that way, but when you're in public, great fuels the fire. And if you don't back up the great, you're going to get hammered. You won't be around long. So real good is better. How was your practice today? Good. Not great. It's good. All the time it's good. And then then the press will back off you. You say it's great. Well, what happened? What made it great? You know, but if you say it was good, it was real good practice. You know, or, you know, we had a good practice. Anything that, you know, but great. And it was great for Heisman Trophy winners and guys that are first, you know, academic All-Americans and guys that are, you know, like that. That's when you use great, is when a guy has been proven, he's proven it, and then it comes out. But that word is a hard word, and I know Nick has never used it. He'll never, he you know, how is this when he talks to even pro scouts? How good is this guy? He's real good. You know, he is a real good player.
Coach, I want to ask you about the blowback that assistant coaches get when there's a really bad loss. You had to experience that. Well, you're going to get hammered, and you know where you are, and sometimes you deserve it, and sometimes it makes you a better coach. Mm-hmm. I always thought, you know, when people complained, and they were right, but if you win and they complain, it's a little easier on you, you know. And we had times when we won, so they'd jump on the defense. And they'd get after me or Coach Darlington or somebody, you know. And, I mean, I've had guys write me letters that you're a disgrace to the university, you get out of here, take you and take your wife and get out of town. And, I mean, and guys that use foul language and, you know, and you know, just write them a lot better and say thanks for taking the time to write. That's what I did with 90%. I never got upset with a guy. I had one guy wrote me with the same envelopes all the time, but changed his address, return address, and changed his name and wrote things in there. One time he had to play with 12 guys in the field. I thought, well, that's good. so
I mean, that's the kind of thing you get. You get guys, people, that don't understand young people, and you also, there's times when you're gonna hit the bottom of the barrel, and we probably, if you want to call it, we probably hit the bottom of the barrel. And what are you gonna do? Quit? You're gonna quit? Oh yeah, quitting is the easiest thing in the world to do. Guys that are quitters, they're quitter once, they'll quit again and quit again. And sometimes that's what you got to stay away from this portal. This guy's 2 or 3 places he's been, or 2 places. It's those are the guys that make you nervous.
It's Coach Charlie McBride.
I will say one thing that that bothers me a little bit. The quarterback's a good player. And the thing is, if you noticed in the game, his speed is a question mark. Mm-hmm. And then that cost us some things. And the quarterback, I did with Major Applewhite. Mm-hmm. We knew where he was going to be, and he got hammered. And that ends it right there. If you don't have a good offensive line and a good defensive line, you can go home. Mm-hmm. It's because those are the guys that you can't rush the passer and you can't do this. So those are the things you really got to watch, and those are the coaches you really got to watch. If you're the head coach, you got to really pay attention. I went to practice one day, and our defensive line didn't even have the teamwork. I mean, the specialty period where you could work on blocking schemes and everything else. And then you end up with 5 or 10 plays, maybe even 10 plays, and that's all you have. And you work on those. Well, we got to throw the ball more. We got to throw the ball today. We got to throw them. So you got to put your marbles somewhere. So if you're going to put it in the passing game, then that's where you spend your money. But you don't have a good offensive line, and we had the best, and we were lucky. And if you can look at number 1 in the nation time and time again in rushing and things like that. And our defense, one time we were first in everything. One year we were first in every category. I mean, every major category. And so, that's how good these kids were. And were they highly recruited? No. Jason Peter and some of the Peter kids. Jason Peter was an offensive tackle when he came here. So, it's the person's mentality and his ability as an athlete. Sometimes you recruit guys that aren't 5 stars and 4 stars. You find a guy that's a real hammerhead. I had a defensive end in camp one time, and he was so good I couldn't believe it, but nobody recruited him. And it was down in Florida and so forth, and we didn't go down there that much, and so we didn't recruit the guy. But I'll remember that kid all the way to my grave.
Coach, we'll see how Saturday looks. Nebraska, Ohio State, see if they bounce back.
Well, you're going to play hard. I think, those kids are athletes. They know what it takes, and they aren't a bunch of dumb kids. They know what's going on. They know what's happening, and they're sick, and they're going to prove it. Now, may not prove it. Maybe they won't win. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, they're not going to play a lot better. I'll tell you that.
Coach, you take care. We'll holler Monday, okay? Appreciate you.
Okay, guys.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, and it's Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, along with Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore. You see him on Big Red Wrap-Up at Jay Moore 44 on Twitter's where you follow. Jay, not going to be a fun Tuesday show. Nebraska shellacked by Indiana 56-7. There's a lot to get to, but I want to start with your takeaway here and expectation going in versus what you saw on Saturday?
Yeah, my expectations were vastly different than what the actual outcome was. I expected this team to compete. I expected them to execute at a much higher level. I expected us to play better defense. I expected us to show up, and they just didn't. Obviously, the most disappointing performance this year by far. I thought Nebraska had a legitimate chance of winning this football game. I didn't know what to think of Indiana through their first 6 games. Yeah, and their schedule was not great, but that's a damn good football team. Mm-hmm. I'll give my hat off to them and Signetti, and they're very, very well coached. They're getting a team that is, talent level compared to Nebraska. I don't know. People are thinking that their talent level is much worse than Nebraska because they have a bunch of JMU players coming over. I don't know. I know one thing, that they fully understood the game plan, the message, and they went into a fight and they were prepared. Mm-hmm. Nebraska was not prepared. Nebraska took, the bye week did not suit them well. They looked lethargic. They looked lackadaisical. They weren't ready for the moment, and that was very glaring from really the first series of the game on defense, and then Ja'Cory Barney's execution on the kickoff. Right after that, just the boneheaded play of catching that thing where it was and going out of bounds. So the mental things are issues showed their ugly head again, and I just wasn't expecting Nebraska to look so down physicality-wise. Indiana punched them in the mouth. Nebraska just laid there, and that was very disheartening to me. I thought Nebraska would go in there, and I thought Nebraska was a more physical team, but that was not the case. So a lot of stuff to look at. It's hard to make excuses for this performance. You can't. It's hard to find positiveness in this performance. You can't. It's hard to put lipstick on this pig. But yeah, they got to go back to the drawing board and see where the message has gone wrong, why the inconsistencies. I guess the most frustrating thing for me in this game is I'm okay taking losses, right? Nebraska easily could have lost this football game, and played a lot much better. Mm-hmm. They could look more physical. They could have they could have executed better. They could have just been better situationally, and lost, 31-28. Vastly different discussion today, right? But the fact that a lot of the same issues that this program has seen through different coaching staffs and in different, types of football being played, but it's hard when you're going to your 7th game of the year after a bye week, and they got worse. This team they got exposed, and they look like they got worse. Mm-hmm. And that's what I have a hard time swallowing and stomaching right now, is because I live in a very black and white world. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Mm-hmm. And Nebraska looks like they got worse. And they want to get this thing corrected and fixed rather quickly to, get these last 5 games figured out. Man, there has to be some drastic changes and mindsets, and just you got to better put something together. Otherwise, it could be a rough second half of the year.
Jay, one of the things that you brought up early in that answer was the talent level of Indiana. And I think if it wasn't clear, like Indiana might have guys that weren't as talented as Nebraska's guys whenever they graduated high school, but through coaching, if it's not evidenced by 56-7, those guys have gotten better than Nebraska's guys. They were the more talented football team on Saturday. As we get back into that coaching, a fundamental truth of coaching is whatever shows up on Saturday is either being coached or it's being allowed to happen. That's a fundamental truth of coaching.
It's a great sign in every coach's office.
Yes. And Jay, what were the things that you saw on Saturday that concern you the most that are either being coached or being allowed to happen?
A lot of the same mistakes are being made. won special teams. Obviously they didn't try a field goal. I don't know if they can. The long snapping is a major issue with this football team. Obviously that wasn't improved, or they felt it was much improved over bye week. Just the execution, catching a simple kickoff, but just the mindset. So the communication's not there. I think the things that the physical things. I mean, Indiana threw us around. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were so much of a more physical football team. So that's preparation. That's how you practice. I think Nebraska practices physically. They do. I mean, you've seen it. I mean, they tackled live in the leading up to the Rutgers week. I don't know if they took too much time off to the bye week or what, or this team was filling themselves or whatever it was that. I just don't know where the disconnect is and the physicality thing. You see Indiana's wide receivers blocking well on the edge. Our guys can't get off blocks. No one got off blocks defensively. That was disheartening, and vice versa. I mean, our guys. I mean, they were tossing our guys all over the place. I mean, you had penalties on Banks, which he had a block in the back. He's had multiple issues with that this year, but I can't remember if it was a play to Barney or who it was. But I mean, Illinois' DB just chucked him to the side and made the tackle. I mean, that to me, that play alone just shows you this is a different mindset that Indiana had coming into this game. Nebraska, you heard Rhule said they're going to embrace the underdog mentality. That obviously was far from the case. Nebraska got punched in the mouth and kind of they didn't want any part of it, right? So that's what. Listen, they're not being coached this way. I just don't know. It's always the hard question. Is it being coached or is it being allowed to happen? And I think Rhule's not allowing this stuff to happen. I think these guys just get in these situations, and I don't know what it is. They lose their competitive juice, their competitive instincts. Are they? Do we have a team of a bunch of front runners where it has to go well early on for them to be excited to play football? I don't know. To me, it's when it all comes down to it, you're playing, if it's going, I mean, trust me, I can speak to this because I've been a part of a lot of ugly losses at Nebraska or professionally where it's not fun to play. All right. It's no one wants to be out there. Trust me. But you do it, whether you're doing it for the end on your helmet or the name on your back, but it just takes some pride in how you operate and how you do things. Because nothing worse is when you sit down on Sunday afternoon and watch that film amongst your peers, and they might have watched this tape in front of the whole staff, right, as a whole team, which is never a good thing. At least you can point to yourself like, hey, I went out there and did my thing. Maybe my 10 other teammates didn't show up, but at least I was out there. And the other thing too is there's some of these guys who have some second level prospect, NFL ability. A game like that will lose you some commas in your bank account, and so they got to figure out what they want. They got to figure out how they want to approach it, where they're going, because the inconsistencies of it all just doesn't add up. You can't do it one week and then the next week it's completely different. That's a team Michigan game last year was one thing because Michigan was obviously the best team in the country. That's year one. Okay, you get a pass. But year two, 7th game of the season, you have an opportunity to show, what you thought you're made of and kind of prove your ability to get over this hump and show what you've been, that you're an improved football team, you're an improved program. And that was obviously vastly far from the truth. So ego's got to be checked. Pride's got to be checked. What do you want at the end of the day? You got to everybody. That's from the top down. I mean, this is a gut check time. This is starting with your strength staff. Everybody, what are we doing? How are we operating? You can't. I know you can't do anything drastically different, but you gotta start to see. How's the message being taken, and how are we gonna get this thing moving in the right direction? They're still 5-2. Obviously, there's still a lot to play for, but obviously this week in this game is gonna be tough. And teams seem to be getting better this time of year, and Nebraska's definitely taking a couple steps back.
It's Jay Moore with us from Big Red Wrap Up at Jay Moore 44, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, as we're doing a therapy Monday. Nebraska annihilated by Indiana. It's one thing to lose. It's another thing to get dominated. And Jay Bird, a guy that's a popular source of arrows is Marcus Satterfield, the Nebraska play caller. While points and production are what they are, Nebraska scored 30 points once in 15 outings against Power 5 competition. Meanwhile, offensively, 14 points is the most points allowed for Nebraska to win. And shout out Brandon Vogel with his numbers in his column today with Counter Read. But what do you call if you're Satterfield? The O-line's not getting a push for the run game. You don't have a stud running back to help the offensive line. Your quarterback doesn't have time to throw in some instances. And if he does have time to throw, maybe he's making a bad choice or trying to do too much with who he's throwing to, or the guys aren't getting open, okay? And then if you want to throw short, you've already touched on the downfield blocking. So I've laid out all the things that's inconsistent and not something that's a strength offensively. What do you call if you're Satterfield? And you can't go kick a 30-yard field goal confidently on 4th and 8.
Yeah, it's hard. And I get it. He needs to. They got to do some soul searching as well and see how they want to go forward. But it's hard. Luckily, this offense, other than your couple left tackles getting hurt, has stayed rather healthy. But when Rhule does have time, it appears his wide receivers can't get open, or they're not running unique calls or unique route combinations to confuse secondaries to get your guys open. You can't run the football, so that's an issue. And then when you do get into scoring, and into scoring position, and we all know the field shrinks, you can't kick a field goal. So it's hard. I get it. I'm frustrated with his play calling as much as everybody's is, but what can they do? You can't really say this offense does anything well. You thought they were kind of getting a feel for it early on, but now it's like, I don't know what they can do. You've seen Emmett Johnson do things okay at times. You've seen Ramir do some things okay. Daldell gets some tough yardage, but has a knack for fumbling, obviously. You've seen wide receivers do some good things against zone coverage, but if it's a man-to-man situation, they have a hard time getting off press coverage. Fedoni, was finally accessed and utilized a little bit this weekend. He was probably the only bright spot from the offense, but it's hard. I don't know what you do, but I know one thing: you can't throw it 45 times. And I get it. This game is probably an anomaly too, because you're trying to catch up in score. But you somehow, some way, I don't know what they got to do, but you got to start running the football better. You have to. If you're not, listen. This defenses aren't respect the run game. It's now without a true running quarterback. It's 11 on 10. Nebraska's down a guy. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to run the football, and you have to make them respect it. And no one has to right now because they can't. They show glimpses of it. And listen, the backs, they've been okay, but the ability to make people miss, blocking is never going to be perfect. But you have to have the ability to make people miss, and be physical through contact and fight. And too many times our guys are going down in first contact. So I get it, man. It's a tough situation right now for everybody in trying to figure out what you do with this offense, because you have a really good quarterback. Now, he struggled the last couple of weeks, but I have to
get him some help, don't you?
What's that?
You got to get him some help.
Yeah, you do. I mean, these wide receivers. I mean, he had time to throw multiple times on Saturday, and he's holding the ball for 4 or 5 seconds, and he has nowhere to go with it until it's a check down to Ramir or Emmett, and they rally. So it's everything. I mean, from the top to bottom, everything has to be looked at and figured out to not have a similar situation go in Columbus this weekend, and B, find another win, 2 wins for this rest of this year to get this thing back on track. But I will say how doom and gloom it seems right now. I feel very confident that Matt Rhule is the guy to get it figured out and have those tough conversations with his coaches and his players to say, hey, this isn't cutting it. Mm-hmm. Are you in or are you out? Are you going to do the necessary things? I'm talking coaches and players now. Are you going to do the necessary things, get this thing figured out? If you're not, we're moving on.
Jay,
and that's the conversation you got to have right now.
Jay, what's shocking to me on a day like today is if you go back to week 2 when Nebraska played Colorado's offense couldn't run the football. They couldn't keep Shedeur Sanders clean. It was a rough day offensively for Colorado. You turn around, look at what they did on Saturday against Arizona, who might not be world beaters, but they're not a bad team in their own right.
It's a good road win.
They ran the ball for 155 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and Shedeur Sanders was only sacked once. And that's what's shocking to me is you have a team in Colorado that has gotten better, that's learned from their mistakes, that's cleaned things up. And you compare it to Nebraska, and I know Nebraska didn't have the rough start to the season that Colorado did, but you still haven't been able to get better offensively. You haven't been able to find ways to keep your quarterback off the dirt. You haven't been able to find ways to generate a rushing attack, and you compare it to Colorado, who a lot of Husker fans like to throw arrows at. They figured it out as the year went on.
Yeah, that's what's frustrating. And it drives me nuts. I cannot stand getting worse. It just can't happen. Inexcusable. Like I said, you're okay. You're okay losing football games against good teams, and Indiana's a really good football team. But you show improvements, right? You show certain things. You show ability to run the football. But there's no part of me that I can pick from any of that game other than maybe Fedoni making some plays finally. That this team got better. They didn't. That's hard because you see other programs who got off to slower starts kind of get better. Clemson, right? Clemson gets smoked game 1 against Georgia. They kind of got things going. Notre Dame had that hiccup against Northern Illinois. They're getting better. Colorado, right? There's other teams that have had hiccups. It's not as bad as Florida State, right? Oh, at least we got that. But it's just I think this all just was just a surprise to everybody that they had a performance like that. I thought we were past this, especially with the schedule. I mean, listen, if this happens against Ohio State next week, it's Ohio State, right? They're a damn good football team. You know, they're going to be in the college football playoff more than likely and have a chance to win it all. And you're on the road, and I understand, but you just didn't see this against Indiana. And it's just hard. It's all 3 phases sucked. That's just the way you got to put it. It's just calling a spade a spade. It was bad. All 3 phases. And some of the phases have been struggling more than the others. You just got to figure out how to clean it up, get it fixed, and get these guys back on track, one way or the other.
Jay, about 90 seconds. What happens Saturday? What needs to happen Saturday?
You need to come in there and just they got to. What's hard about when you have a loss like this, and you're going to a road game at Ohio State is you got to be able to learn from this fast, what the mistakes were, and learn from it, and you got to flush it because you got to get ready for Ohio State. And they're already practicing it. You know, the practice this morning to get ready. You got to come in there and you got to have some pride. You got to fight. You got to go in there and fight. You got to try to be the most physical team as you can, and whatever happens. Listen, I don't think Nebraska wins this football game by any means. If they could keep it, you know,
compete.
Yeah, just compete. I mean, I already sent my score prediction for Big Red wrap up, and you know, I don't have Nebraska covering. I'll put it that way. So compete, fight, quit looking at the scoreboard. Who gives a damn? Go play. Mm-hmm. Go fight and play. And if you're not going to do it for Nebraska or your other teammates, go do it for yourself. Go do it for your name on your back and have some pride about yourself, and quit feeling sorry for yourself and go fight. Mm-hmm. And if whatever happens, happens. If you feel good about it, great. But just have some pride and just go compete and fight. That's what you got to do this weekend.
Jay Moore with us. Jay Bird, we'll check in next Monday, bud. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this Therapy Monday. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play on Hail Varsity Radio. Give us a rating, good, bad, or ugly. We like the feedback. Hail Varsity YouTube, like and subscribe there. Can watch the show daily or catch that version of the pod, Hail Varsity Radio. Twitter at HVarsity Radio. So, Great Red Shark chimes in. The stream says, the vibe I'm getting from Husker Nation is that the Rhule era is over. We've not moved on after we've not moved on after 1.5 seasons. Time to start over again. I don't think that's it at all. Some of you are ticked, and I get the 56-7 thing, and it didn't look great. It didn't feel great if you're a fan. And to me, Saturday is super telling. What kind of fight and effort and response do you get? What tweaks and adjustments? And you're not going to win. That's fine, but you don't have to go into it feeling that way if you're a player or a coach. You can't. So go out there and swing away. Todd emails in, says, I think we were prepared, just got outmanned, got outplayed, got out-executed. Do you think Florida was prepared when we demolished them in 96? I think not. Just got beat by a great team. That's just it. Like, it's okay to give Indiana kudos and still be ticked off about how it went down. You just looked all out of sorts. There were no answers. And I don't know that you'll find any test scores or answers for next Saturday, but it's got to have a little more giddy up to it with just what you're trying to do. Yeah. We've outlined all the warts.
And
some of those warts have grown.
And that's kind of what I was getting at the end of the first hour, which I'll kind of lay out my thoughts. Like, there's people that are calling for Matt Rhule's head. I could not disagree more with them. I think Saturday was a sign that, hey, what we thought 3 weeks ago might not be the case. It's still very much a work in progress, and I think there's some serious doubts that were raised. It was Mitch Sherman who said in his article Saturday night, question everything. I agree with that. If you were blindly following Matt Rhule and everything he was saying, I disagree with you. But if you're also calling for Matt Rhule's head, I also disagree with you. I don't want to fall into the trap of, well, you can't evaluate him because he's still using Scott Frost leftovers. But at the end of the day, you can't get a full picture of Matt Rhule's rebuild until you see more of the guys that he's brought in, fewer of the guys that were. At some
point, you've got to turn to what you think can help you win.
Yes, and that's kind of what I'm waiting for. And I think it's a stain that Saturday was not a day where we started seeing some of those guys whenever the score was what it was. But you can't get a full picture of the Matt Rhule rebuild until some of those guys start playing. I think some of those guys should be playing more. It's a concern to me that they aren't, but you don't get a full picture of what Matt Rhule's building until those guys, the guys that fit the system that he is bringing in, are on the football field. He did it earlier at Temple and Baylor.
These are his guys.
I don't like the fact that it's a lot of the holdovers still playing here at Nebraska, but you can't get a full picture of the rebuild as a whole until it's the guys that he has brought in that fit the system, that fit the culture that he is building, that are the guys that are playing on Saturdays.
Can we squeeze in cut 14?
We are out of time for that.
A little more Rhule tomorrow. But thank you for checking in. Thanks for all your comments. Red Wine, Captain, Ken, so many of you that were in the starting five as well. The shout-outs in the stream, all of you that checking us out on the Hail Varsity Network as well, a radio station near you. Appreciate that greatly. Tomorrow on the show, we'll run down Mitch Sherman. We'll spend time with Papa Searles. Jeremiah Searles going to be with us. And Michael Brunt's going to join the show. So back at you tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity. Like and subscribe, Hail Varsity YouTube. Talk tomorrow at 4. Thanks.